everyone. I'm Ashley Banfield. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, 8 a.m. on the West Coast, and we are at 27, the number of days before the nation is set to slip over the fiscal cliff. And that is what people are talking about. Unfortunately, in Washington, they're not talking to each other about it. Right now, President Obama is meeting with the Washington Business Roundtable. That's just minutes after Speaker Boehner met with rank-and-file GOP lawmakers and former Speaker Pelosi met with House Democrats. So they're all in each other's corners, speaking amongst each other, but all eyes are firmly on the cliff. And as we get set for what all of them have to say, let's scoot over to the president. He's emerging from that meeting with the Washington business leaders. Let's see what he has to say.
At the Business Roundtable, Jim, thanks for your leadership. Originally, my team had prepared some remarks. They, always get nervous when I'm out there on my own. Never know what I might say. But given the dialogue that we had the last time, I thought it was useful for me to abbreviate my remarks, speak off the cuff at the top, and then spend most of our time just having a conversation. Let me begin by saying that all of you in this room are not just business leaders, not just CEOs of your companies, but you're also economic leaders and thought leaders in this country. And I recognize that all of you have an enormous investment, not only in your own companies, but in the well-being of America. There are a lot of patriots in this room, and people who care deeply about not only your bottom lines, but also the future of this country. You've shown that over the last 4 years. We've gone through as difficult an economic period as we've seen in most of our lifetimes. And we've emerged not yet where we need to be, but we've certainly made progress. And the reason we've made progress in part has been because of the outstanding management and productivity gains and efficiencies and competitiveness that you've been able to achieve in each and every one of your companies. And I've said this to some of the small groups. Let me repeat it to the large group. I am passionately rooting for your success, because if the companies in this room are doing well, then small businesses and medium-sized businesses up and down the chain are doing well. If the companies in this room are doing well, then folks get jobs, consumers get confidence, and we're going to be able to compete around the world. Now, the good news is that despite the extraordinary challenges that we've seen over the last 4 years, there is progress in some key sectors of our economy. We've seen housing finally begin to bounce back for the first time, and that obviously has an enormous ripple effect throughout the economy. Consumer confidence is as high as it's been. Many of you over the last 2-3 years have experienced record profits or near record profits, and have a lot of money where you're prepared to invest in plants and equipment and hire folks. Obviously, globally, the economy is still soft. Europe is going to be in the doldrums for quite some time. Asia is not charging forward, and some of the emerging markets are not charging forward as quickly as they were maybe a few years ago. But I think what all of you recognize, and many of you have told me, is that everybody's looking to America, because they understand that if we're able to put forward a long-term agenda for growth and prosperity that's broad-based here in the United States, that confidence will not just increase here in the United States, it will increase globally. And we can get the kind of virtuous cycle that I think all of us have been waiting for and want to see. What's holding us back right now, ironically, is a lot of stuff that's going on in this town. And I know that many of you have come down here to try to see, is there a way that we can break through the logjam and go ahead and get things done. And I'm here to tell you that nobody wants to get this done more than me. I know that you've gotten a lot of briefings, but let me just try to describe where the situation is right now with respect to our fiscal situation, both what the opportunities are, but what also the challenges are. I campaigned over the last year on the idea that we need to make sure that this economy is growing and that we're providing ladders of opportunity
All right, that's unfortunate. We're just getting to the meat of what he had to say, but let me just do some quick summary for you. This meeting that he was having with the Washington Business Roundtable, and I'm sorry I sound so sick. I'm like everybody else with the bug. This is critical because what the criticism of the president has been up until now is that instead of meeting with Republican lawmakers on a regular basis, he is meeting with everyone else and then sending those everyone else's out to market his plan or put pressure on Republican lawmakers to pass his version of what he sees as the solution to the fiscal cliff. So there is the cliff, and there is the chasm. And the chasm is that gaping divide between the debt-cutting blueprints of the president and of the speaker, John Boehner. So Mr. Obama, as you may know, is standing very, very firm on the $1.6 trillion in tax hikes, most of them aimed at the top income earners across this country. He is offering $400 billion in cuts from the so-called entitlements, but he also wants to spend $50 billion on infrastructure. Mr. Boehner, on the other hand, as we scoot to the right, is offering half of what the president's number is on those taxes, and not in what you'd say increases, more like closing of loopholes. He also wants much deeper cuts in entitlements and beyond. So we're watching both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue this hour. We've got Dan Lothian, who's standing, pat at the White House to figure out just exactly what the movements are every day there. Dana Bash watching everything on Capitol Hill. Dan, let me start with you since we were just hearing from the president. We were so unceremoniously cut off by a nasty satellite. Let me talk a little bit about these business people and what exactly they can bring to the table, because it seems as though he's soliciting them for advice.
He is, but at the same time, I mean, you brought up a good point that the president really has been doing a lot of the pressure as opposed to sitting down face to face with lawmakers up on the Hill. He's using outside groups to put pressure on lawmakers. So he's had middle class Americans here at the White House. He's had small business owners and big time CEOs here at the White House. And now he's reaching out to the Business Roundtable, many movers and shakers in the business community to make the case as a White House official that if without this fiscal cliff situation being resolved, it doesn't give the certainty that not only businesses need to start making investments, to hiring more people, but also middle-class Americans can't get that comfort that they need to know that their taxes won't go up at the end of the year. And so that's sort of the message that the president is bringing to these business leaders today. But in addition to that, trying to put pressure on them to support his approach, which is those upper income Americans need to pay more, Ashley.
Okay, so here's another really critical movement, and I don't know how critical it's being seen, but to me it sounded like some movement. The president, in that Bloomberg interview, which was the first sit-down interview since the election, it seemed as though he was perhaps prepared to make an overture on this insistence of taxing the top 2% income earners across the board, and that budge seemed to come in the way of permanence. Did I hear wrong or read wrong? Is he maybe willing to consider this kind of a demand a temporary demand?
Yes, I mean, it does seem like there's a little bit of wiggle room there from the president. And he was asked, his White House spokesman, Jay Carney, was asked about this. And he didn't really want to get nailed down. The answer that you always get from Jay Carney is that he doesn't want to negotiate these kinds of things in public. But it does appear that the president created a little bit of wiggle room. The big issue, though, is what's really going on behind the scenes. I mean, are they negotiating? Are there some phone calls or emails going back and forth? Something that's happening behind the scenes that we're not seeing in front of the cameras. And I just heard from a GOP aide who told me nothing has changed from yesterday. There's still no phone calls, no emails, no communication ongoing behind the scenes, even though the White House says that the conversations continue. It's very difficult to see how this ball will get moved down the field if they're not talking.
Okay, and can I just maybe illustrate more about that comment you just made? Was the quote actually, no conversations today, no emails, tweets, or carrier pigeons?
That's right. I know it's very interesting because I think that's the disturbing part of this, that a lot of time there's a lot of posturing that takes place in front of the cameras. We've seen this happen over the last 3 years, but when that is happening in front of the cameras, you always hear behind the scenes, there's a lot of back and forth, the negotiations are ongoing, and we're hearing that nothing at this point. So I think that's a little disturbing. Okay. The next few hours will be critical.
Dan Lothian for us live at the White House. Thank you, sir. I want to go over to Dana Bash, who's standing by on Capitol Hill. So the Speaker obviously has the same problems, Dana, that I would assume the President has. They each have those in their party who are at opposite ends of the spectrum, some who are very much dug in, others who would like to give a little and actually get a deal, perhaps. Is the Speaker facing that two-front war at this point, and is he figuring out ways to perhaps not face two fronts in his own party?
The Speaker always faces a two-front war. It is the part of the fascinating dynamic and difficult dynamic for any leader, but particularly this particular Speaker in this particular conference, which was elected to be a fiscally conservative and to try to reduce the deficit. So, yes, it's very difficult. However, he just had his conference this morning. Myself and other members of our team were standing outside, talked to dozens of members, and it does seem as though internally he didn't get an earful. Certainly we're hearing from conservatives outside that they're very upset that the counteroffer that the Republican leadership put forward includes $800 billion in new tax revenue. But behind the scenes, he really has been able to hold his conference together, and they're staying unified behind him in going forward with the process. And the Speaker was asked why that is. Here's what he said.
Our members understand the seriousness of the situation that our country faces. Trillion-dollar deficits for as far as the eye can see. $16 trillion worth of debt already on the books. Every man, woman, and child in America owing the federal government over $50,000. And that number is increasing every single year. And I think as a result, our members understand that we've got to solve the problem, and we will.
So, Ashley, the bottom line is that it really seems obvious, especially after talking to members coming out of that meeting, that the Speaker and other members of the leadership have been able to, at least so far, successfully turn the rank and file's ire against the President and not him. In fact, we just got some remarks that he gave privately from our Deirdre Walsh. She obtained them, and he said to his conference, the American people reelected him, meaning the President, and they reelected us. That's not a mandate to raise taxes. It's a mandate to work together.
Mandate to work together, which means they may not go on their break, which is expected in about 10 days. I think you heard the Speaker tell you as well that he's going to stick around, right? He's going to, just quickly, Dana, he's going to stay regardless of whether they go on break, right?
Right. And the question was really about the fact that the House of Representatives is going to finish their work this week in, I don't know, maybe about 45 minutes, and it's only Wednesday. And they're going to go home. They're not going to be in session Thursday. They're not going to be in session Friday. So what I asked the Speaker is whether or not those are really good optics for the House just to kind of leave town while the fiscal cliff is so close in front of us. And that was his answer, that he will be in town. He will be ready, willing, and able to talk to the President anytime. So that was really the issue. The House Republican leadership, I will tell you, they say that they simply don't have any legislation to put on the floor right now. That's why they're sending members home. And they hope that they can try to play the outside game that the President's playing by talking to their constituents, getting some support back home for the message that Republicans admit that they've really not done a great job on. The Democrats are winning the message war, which is why hold the wealthiest middle-class Americans hostage for wealthiest Americans' taxes.
Well, happy holidays to them. All right, Dana Bash, thank you. And we do expect to hear soon from some Senate Democrats as well. They're scheduled to hold a live news conference. You'll hear it right here first.